Last half of chapter 7, Jane on the 8:15. Now the time passed quickly. The train went very fast to make up time for the lost time at the Housatonic Bridge. It seemed to Jane she scarcely had time to put a check on her timetable by the name of one station before they were at the next. Suddenly the conductor hopped up from his pop-up seat and said, "Green's Farm Station, Green's Farms." Jane watched the lady gather up her belongings. She said, "I hope you have a nice visit." This thought brought a smile to the lady's face. She said, "You're a right smart little girl running that contraption up the tracks, and all the while we were on the right train until then. Oh, Walton, oh, he can be mean, but he wouldn't do anything like that, put me on the wrong train. I hope you're on the right one, and that paper you have there is to be trusted. Otherwise, hop off and get yourself onto one of those little contraptions again and pump it down the tracks to Neufchâtel." "New Rochelle," Jane said. "Neufchâtel's a cheese. We eat it. Snappy." "Cheese? Now I've heard of everything," said the lady. The conductor came up to the Montawisi lady. He said, "Come on, Ida Brooks, you get off here. This is Green's Farms. No more excursions on handcars this trip." He took her satchel, but she hung on to her raspberries. Jane watched her from the window. A jolly-looking, rather plump lady rushed to meet her. "That must be Agnes," thought Jane. "Ada!" screamed Agnes. She laughed heartily. "Ada! Of all things, I thought Ida was coming. What a nice surprise. I love Ida, and I love you." She kissed and hugged Ada some more to prove this. Ada smiled and handed her the raspberries. The train began to move. The last thing Jane heard the lady from Montawisi say was, "Oh, dear me, oh, dearie me, did you write Ida, not Ada? Your writing is so bad. Oh, I am the wrong person." Jane heard no more, but looking back out the open window, she saw Ada making motions as though making a little handcar go, pushing the imaginary rod up and down and pushing it up and pressing it down, and pointing back down the tracks while a look of marvel spread over Agnes's face. Then, suddenly remembering Jane, her rescuer, the lady pointed Jane out to her cousin. Both of them waved, and that was the last Jane saw of that lady from Montawisi. Peace now on the 8:15. A major unexpected happening that had not been rehearsed had happened. Would there be more? A man sat down in Ada's seat. Then he noticed a little green worm inching its way along the windowsill, raising its head now and then as though to get its bearings. Little did he know this was a traveler worm that had been on a handcar in a box of berries. When the worm reached the end of the sill and paused in its searching, the man gently lifted it between his thumb and forefinger and dropped it out of the window. What a kind man, thought Jane, and how brave to pick up a little lost worm. I'll learn to be that brave some day. Jane checked Green's Farms off her timetable. She examined George's red bandana, folded it carefully, and put it in her pocket. She smiled. It had NY, NH, and HRR Co. printed on it in white. What an addition to the museum! Then she dreamily watched the passing scene, almost forgetting to mark off the stops. Hills in the far places, small rivers meandering. She came to with a start. "Next station, New Rochelle," said the conductor. Jane quickly gathered her things together and stood up and went to the back of the coach to stand beside the conductor. He recognized her as the little girl who had rescued a little lost lady and had propelled a handcar lickety-lickety down the tracks to catch up with the 8:15. "Going by handcar wherever you're going?" he joked as he helped her off. Jane smiled. "Nope, don't know yet." And that was the last that Jane saw of that nice conductor, or the 8:15, as it started up and went puff, puff, puffing on its way to Grand Central Station, New York. Jane stood on the platform to get her bearings. She looked around. She knew what trolley she should take if Ray and Sylvie did not meet her, or that she could walk. She didn't see Ray and Sylvie. She did see the trolley, but she had just decided to walk when she heard a familiar horn. Sounded just like Sam Duty's horn. And there were Ray and Sylvie riding up to the curb, waving, saying, "Jane, Jane, we're a little late, but here we are." So she had after all, been met by Ray and Sylvie and been driven to their home in Wheezy. It wasn't far. They passed the little wooden church where Ray was the minister. Right next to it was their house, the rectory, brown like the church. They drove around a few blocks so Jane would know where some stores were and where she was at if she went for a walk. And she saw some nice little shops, and she thought she would buy a present for Joey and Rufus sometime when she didn't have anything to do. But there wasn't going to be much of that. That week flew by. It seemed as though the ride on the 8:15 was longer than the whole week that she stayed with Sylvie and Ray. The first thing they did was have a big dinner of Swedish meatballs and other good things. They were very interested in Jane's story of the ride on the little handcar and all about the lady from Montewisi. They both knew Montewisi well themselves, and they felt a little homesick sometimes for those picnics that they used to have up on Peter's Rock. The confusion about Ada and Ida made Ray burst into laughter. After dinner, Ray went into his study to work on his sermon, and Sylvie said she had got to go and meet with the girls friendly, but would not be long. It was like that every day. It might just as well have been Cranberry, for Sylvie was always having choir rehearsals, altar guild meetings, sewing circle meetings, and such like. Although Sylvie did teach Jane how to crochet and how to embroider, so that Jane was able to put lace around a lovely little handkerchief for Mama. Jane found she did have some time to herself, to read, to sew, and to go for walks. The first walk she took was to the row of small shops. In the window of one, she had seen little shiny black leather notebooks like the train man and the conductor had to write important train matters in. She bought 3, one for Joey and for his dates and facts and figures, even though he really didn't need to write these things down. He had them in his head. Jane didn't know what Rufus would put in his, but she knew what she would put in hers. Conversations. That was going to be the name of her notebook. When she got back to her little room after her walk, she rubbed all the notebooks on the bandana that George had given her, so when she got home to Cranberry, she could say, "Smell them. What do they smell like?" If they didn't know, she would say, "Train. They smell like train." And so the week went by. Oh, yes, they took some rides in Wheezy. One lovely one along a river on a new parkway, and one to an amusement park in Rye. But before she knew it, she was back in Wheezy. That's a car, you know. Back in Wheezy with Sylvie and Ray going to the railroad station. This time it was a train in the early afternoon, a 2 o'clock train from the Grand Central, so that she would be home in time for dinner. "Give my love to Mama, give my love to everybody," said Sylvie. As the train was leaving, she was trying not to cry. Soon Jane was back in Cranberry. Joey was there at the station. At dinner, she told them about Ray and Sylvie and how they lived, but the story they wanted to have her tell again and again was how she and a little lady from Montewisi had a ride on a handcar to catch up with their train, and they all liked the part about the raspberries and the little green worm. Montewisi, Montewisi, Mama murmured, for many memories lay behind that name for her. Mama admired the handkerchief. Joey loved the notebook, rubbed it, and thought he might work for that railroad company some day. Rufus rushed up to his room with his leather notebook, and right away he wrote in it the words, "trolley cars." The next morning Jane climbed the fence. She hoped it was laundry day for Mrs. Price. It was. Mrs. Price came out with her basket. "Jane, you back? So soon? How was it all? Come over here." Jane jumped down. She and Mrs. Price sat on the back stoop, and Jane began her story. "Well, there was a lady on the train." "Do tell, I want to know," said Mrs. Price. So Jane told her the story of her ride on the 8:15. "You know," she said, "it was just exactly like I said. You can rehearse and rehearse a play or a happening, but the real thing is never exactly the way you had it all rehearsed in your mind." "I know," said Mrs. Price, nodding her head sagely. "Who would have ever thought up a hand car?" End of chapter 7.